The war nobody knew was coming. The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before them, an ocean of stars that had existed long before any of them were born and would remain long after they were gone. Captain Elias Carter stood on the bridge of the UHS Nemesis, his hands clasped behind his back as he observed the battle unfolding before him. His crew worked in near silence, their eyes fixed on the monitors that displayed a live feed of the slaughter taking place just a few thousand kilometers away. The Osheri, a peaceful alien race known for their advancements in medicine and energy refinement, were being torn apart by the ruthless Vorka Dominion, a war-hungry empire that had conquered half the known galaxy in a matter of decades. Their ships were crude, massive, and efficient, resembling jagged, floating fortresses of steel and plasma fire. Against them, the Osheri stood no chance. Their sleek, golden-hued vessels, built for exploration rather than war, were being picked apart with brutal efficiency. The Nemesis, one of humanity's most classified warships, sat cloaked in the distance, its advanced stealth technology rendering it invisible to both sides. They had been here for weeks, observing the battle, watching as the Vorka reduced entire planets to rubble. The Osheri had called for help, desperate distress signals sent out on every frequency, pleading with the universe to intervene. And yet, no one came. Carter clenched his jaw as he watched another Osheri cruiser detonate in a violent fireball, its escape pods targeted by enemy fighters before they could even clear the wreckage. His fingers twitched at his side, itching to give the order. The Nemesis had the firepower to change the course of this war in a single strike. It was built for situations like this, a vessel of unparalleled destructive capability, designed to level battlefields before the enemy even knew what hit them. But orders were orders. Earth had spent centuries hiding in the shadows, ensuring that no other civilization knew the full extent of humanity's military capabilities. The strategy had kept them safe, allowing them to advance in secret while the rest of the galaxy saw them as an insignificant species, barely capable of interstellar travel. The moment they revealed their strength, everything would change. Alliances would shift, enemies would emerge, and humanity would never again know peace. Yet, standing here, watching innocents being massacred, Carter wasn't sure he could live with himself if he did nothing. "Captain," a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Lieutenant Nora Vasquez, his tactical officer. Her dark eyes burned with barely restrained fury. "The Vorka have locked onto another Osheri transport. It's full of civilians, mostly children." Carter's stomach turned. He knew what that meant. The Vorka didn't take prisoners. They exterminated. "They're firing," Vasquez continued, her voice cold. Carter turned his gaze to the screen just in time to see the transport's shield flicker under the first impact. Then a second. A third. The hull split apart like fragile glass. A deafening silence filled the bridge. The kind of silence that carried weight, that demanded action. And then it happened. The Osheri flagship, already heavily damaged, altered its course, charging headlong into the Vorka formation. Its captain, undoubtedly aware that survival was impossible, had chosen a warrior's death. The vessel's core overloaded as it collided with the Vorka battleship, creating an explosion so powerful it briefly outshone the nearest star. A shockwave rippled through the battlefield, sending debris scattering in all directions. It was a final act of defiance. And it wasn't enough. The Vorka fleet barely flinched, their ranks closing once more as they prepared to finish what they started. More Osheri vessels attempted to flee, but the Dominion's warships hunted them down without hesitation, blasting them apart one by one. Carter exhaled sharply. He looked at his officers, seeing the same expression on every face. They wanted to act. "Orders, sir," Vasquez asked, her voice edged with urgency. Carter didn't answer immediately. He turned back to the display, watching as the Vorka continued their slaughter. And suddenly, the weight of centuries of secrecy didn't seem so important anymore. Maybe they had been wrong to hide for so long. Maybe today was the day they stopped pretending. Maybe today was the day they reminded the galaxy what humanity was capable of. A decision settled deep in his chest, solid and undeniable. "Disable stealth," Carter commanded. A few heads snapped toward him in shock, but no one questioned the order. "Yes, sir," Vasquez confirmed, pressing the command into the console. For the first time since arriving in this system, the Nemesis revealed itself. From the Vorka perspective, the event was almost supernatural. One moment, there was nothing. Empty space. The next, a behemoth warship stood between them and their prey, its sleek, black hull radiating menace, its surface lined with glowing red energy veins pulsing like a living entity. The Vorka hesitated. For the first time in this war, they hesitated. Carter leaned forward. "Broadcast this message," he ordered. A brief pause, then Vasquez nodded. "You're live, Captain." He exhaled. Then, in a voice as cold and unyielding as the void, he spoke. "This is the UHS Nemesis. Cease your attack immediately or be annihilated." The entire battlefield seemed to freeze. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. The Vorka, no doubt, were trying to determine if this was some kind of trick. They had faced no resistance for months. The idea that someone would challenge them directly was absurd. Then they made their decision. The first Vorka warship fired, a massive plasma lance tearing through space toward the Nemesis. Carter didn't flinch. "All hands," he commanded, his voice calm and absolute. "Battle stations." The Nemesis came alive. Its weapons, hidden beneath layers of adaptive plating, emerged from their compartments, charging with deadly precision. The ship's defense grid, more advanced than anything in the known galaxy, activated instantly, absorbing the enemy fire without a scratch. And then, for the first time in history, a human warship entered the war. The galaxy would never be the same again. The wrath of humanity unleashed. The Vorka Dominion had conquered countless civilizations, reducing empires to ash with a ruthlessness that made them feared across the galaxy. But never before had they encountered a force like this. The UHS Nemesis, a vessel unlike anything the Vorka had ever seen, stood defiantly between them and their prey, radiating a presence so overwhelming that even the most hardened Vorka commanders hesitated. For a brief moment, the battlefield was eerily silent, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. And then the first Vorka warship fired. A massive plasma lance, glowing an ominous red, surged toward the Nemesis, meant to rip through its hull like it had with every other ship before. But instead of impact, the energy weapon met something invisible, an unseen force that absorbed the full brunt of the attack before dispersing harmlessly into the void. On the Nemesis's bridge, Captain Elias Carter didn't even blink. Shields holding at 98% capacity. Lieutenant Nora Vasquez reported, her fingers dancing across the console as she analyzed enemy movements. "Their plasma weapons are useless against our quantum barrier." Carter nodded. "I expected as much." Across the battlefield, the Vorka warships hesitated. They had watched their weapons tear through the Osheri and other civilizations like tissue paper. Yet this black titan of a vessel remained completely untouched. The Vorka fleet commander, High Warlord Kraluk, bared his fangs in frustration. His blood-red eyes fixated on the Nemesis, his armored exoskeleton glistening under the light of his warship's command center. "This is no ordinary vessel," Kraluk growled. The Vorka had faced challenges before, but this ship, this Nemesis, was different. There were no records of human warships of this caliber. Their intelligence reports had always described humans as a minor species, barely scratching the surface of interstellar warfare. But what stood before them now was something else entirely. A predator disguised as prey. "Deploy full fleet assault," Kraluk commanded. "I want that ship obliterated." His armada of 200 warships responded instantly. Missiles, plasma beams, and torpedoes filled space like a storm of death, all converging toward the Nemesis with lethal intent. a firepower barrage capable of reducing an entire planet to ruin. Carter, standing firm on the bridge, exhaled slowly. "Atlas," he said, addressing the ship's artificial intelligence, "activate counter-offensive protocol." "Hellstorm." The AI's calm, measured voice acknowledged, initiating. And then the void came alive. The Nemesis strikes back. What happened next was unlike anything the Vorka had ever witnessed. The entire surface of the Nemesis shifted, revealing hidden weapon compartments, energy cannons, and thousands of autonomous attack drones, a technological nightmare of pure destruction. Then, the Hellstorm protocol engaged. Phase 1. Interception. The enemy barrage never even reached the Nemesis. A swarm of defensive drones shot outward from the ship, intercepting incoming projectiles with pinpoint precision. Plasma torpedoes were detonated mid-flight, missiles were hacked and redirected, and energy beams were absorbed and rechanneled into the Nemesis's core reactor. To the Vorka, it was impossible. They had launched one of the deadliest volleys in Dominion history, yet not a single shot had touched the Nemesis. Their fleet, which had devastated world after world, now faced an opponent that made their most advanced weapons look like primitive sticks and stones. Phase 2. Annihilation. Carter's voice was steady, cold, and absolute. Fire. The Nemesis's main guns ignited, not crude energy weapons like the Vorkas, but quantum-accelerated rail cannons that bent the laws of physics themselves. In less than a second, the first shot was fired. A Vorka battleship, one of their largest, ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris. The ship simply collapsed in on itself, its molecules shredded apart at the quantum level, leaving behind nothing but a fading blue distortion in space. Then, the Nemesis fired again, and again, and again. Each shot instantly erased another Vorka vessel from existence. Kraluk's blood ran cold. "This isn't war," he whispered. "This is extermination." Phase 3. Psychological warfare. Carter wasn't just destroying ships. He was sending a message. Through open frequencies, the Nemesis broadcast a single statement, translated into every known Vorka dialect. "You have one chance. Retreat now, or be erased." The transmission echoed across the Vorka fleet. It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. Kraluk's warriors, so used to being the superior force, now found themselves facing something beyond comprehension. A warship that ignored their weapons. A warship that erased them from existence with every shot. A warship that had been watching them for weeks. And they had never even known it was there. Kraluk gritted his fangs. The Vorka never retreated. Their kind did not surrender. But then, as the Nemesis destroyed its 20th ship, the first Vorka vessel broke formation and fled. Then another, and another. Like a dying wildfire collapsing under its own weight, the Vorka chain of command unraveled. Warlord Kraluk let out a roar of frustration. He slammed his fists against the control panel of his flagship, his warriors staring at him in fear. He knew what was happening. The legend of Vorka supremacy was crumbling. His entire empire had believed itself unstoppable, yet one human ship, one, had undone centuries of dominance in mere minutes. With a snarl, he slammed his hand onto the emergency retreat command, his voice shaking with rage. "All remaining forces, fall back." But he knew it was already too late. The Vorka weren't just losing a battle. They were losing their place at the top of the galaxy's food chain. And the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The moment the galaxy changed forever. The Vorka Dominion, the galaxy's apex predators, had ruled with an iron grip for centuries. Their war engines had burned through countless civilizations, leaving nothing but smoke and silence in their wake. Entire star systems had surrendered at the mere mention of their name. Yet in the span of minutes, one ship, just one, had turned them into prey. The UHS Nemesis floated in the aftermath of the battle, its black hull unscathed, its presence now etched into the nightmares of every Vorka who had survived. What had once been an unstoppable armada was now nothing but scattered debris and fleeing warships. On the Nemesis's bridge, Captain Elias Carter stood in silence, watching as the final Vorka vessels jumped into hyperspace, retreating with a swiftness that would be recorded in history books. They ran. The mighty Vorka, conquerors of 1,000 worlds, had fled from a single human ship. Carter exhaled slowly, then turned toward his crew. "Status?" he asked, his voice calm despite the significance of what had just happened. Lieutenant Nora Vasquez was the first to respond. "Enemy forces have fully retreated," she said, still staring at the battlefield, as if expecting the Vorka to return. "We're receiving transmissions from the HFY survivors." "There?" She hesitated, as if struggling to find the right word. Carter arched an eyebrow. "They're what, Lieutenant?" Vasquez exhaled a small laugh, shaking her head. "They're worshipping us," she said. "We saved them from total extinction. They're calling us their angels of war." Across the bridge, a few crew members exchanged glances. Angels of war. The implications were immense. Carter straightened, rubbing his jaw. He had expected the HFY to be grateful, but he hadn't expected this level of reverence. "They're broadcasting system-wide," Vasquez continued, "sending messages across the entire quadrant. They're telling everyone what happened, telling them about us, about the Nemesis." Carter's hands clenched. That was a problem. Humanity had spent centuries hiding, ensuring that no other galactic power knew the full extent of their technology, their strategy, their strength. The revelation of the Nemesis wasn't just a ripple in the pond. It was a tidal wave. And now, everyone would know. The message that shook the stars. The HFY transmission was already spreading like wildfire. Unencrypted, open frequency. Anyone listening to galactic channels could hear the voice of Chancellor Luverin, leader of the HFY, trembling as he spoke. "We were dying. The Vorka were unstoppable. Our families, our children, all of them were meant to perish under the Dominion's fire." But then, from the void, came the Nemesis, a ship of legend, a ship of retribution. They did not ask for anything in return. They did not hesitate. They did not waver. They stood between us and extinction and turned our executioners into cowards. To whoever can hear this, know this truth. The humans are not weak. The humans are not powerless. They are the storm that was waiting in the shadows. And the storm has arrived. The transmission ended, but its impact was only beginning. Within minutes, dozens of ships, some civilian, some military, began pinging the Nemesis, desperate for confirmation. Some were sending messages of awe, others, fear, some outright begging for protection. But there was one message that Carter knew would change everything. The Vorka's response. The Nemesis's AI, Atlas, chimed in. "Captain, we are receiving a direct transmission from the Vorka High Command." Carter turned toward the holographic display as a scared, war-weathered Vorka appeared on screen. It was Chancellor Vrogar, the highest-ranking military leader of the entire Dominion. Vrogar was silent for a long time, his reptilian eyes studying Carter with something between loathing and deep, unsettling respect. "Your species has kept secrets from the galaxy for too long, human." Carter did not respond. He let the Vorka speak first. "We always thought you were insignificant, a race of diplomats, traitors, cowards, hiding behind false neutrality." Vrogar's clawed hands clenched. "But now I see the truth. You were never weak. You were waiting." Carter folded his arms, meeting the alien's gaze with unshaken authority. "Your people started this war," he said, voice steady. "We ended it." Vrogar's mouth curled into a toothy snarl, but there was no arrogance anymore. "Do not think this is over." His voice was lower now, almost a whisper. "You have humiliated us. You have shattered our empire's reputation. That alone means war. Carter had expected this. He took a slow step forward, standing in full view of the transmission feed. Then, in perfect Vorka dialect, he responded, "Then know this, High Chancellor of the Vorka. We did not come here to fight a war. We came here to end one. The next time your ships arrive in our space, we won't be defending civilians. We'll be hunting you." Vroger's eyes flashed with something Carter had never seen before in a Vorka leader. Fear. The transmission cut abruptly. A beat of silence. Then Vasquez let out a breath. Well, that escalated quickly. Carter turned toward his crew. The Vorka wouldn't stop. They were too proud, too stubborn, too entrenched in their own legend. But now, the galaxy had seen the truth. And that truth was this: humanity had been watching, learning, preparing. And now, they were done waiting. Carter exhaled, turning back to his command chair. "Atlas," he said. "Yes, Captain." "Broadcast a message to Earth Command." Message parameters. Carter straightened, his voice carrying the weight of history itself. "Tell them that the Nemesis has revealed itself to the galaxy. Tell them that we won. Tell them that the Vorka are coming." He took a slow breath. "And tell them that we'll be ready." As the Nemesis turned toward deep space, its engines burning like the heart of a vengeful god, Carter knew one thing for certain. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The war we can no longer avoid. The echoes of battle reached the galaxy. The battle was over. The Vorka Dominion had retreated, their reputation shattered, their invincible myth reduced to smoldering wreckage drifting through space. But the war was far from over. News of the Nemesis intervention had spread at faster than light speeds across the galactic network. Every intelligence agency, every government, every military force in the known galaxy had received the Oshery's desperate transmission, followed by the brief but chilling declaration from the Vorka. The humans are not what we believed. It wasn't just a battle report. It was a warning. For centuries, humanity had been dismissed as a minor player. Merchants, explorers, diplomats. Other species had traded with them, engaged in economic partnerships, even mocked their apparent lack of military presence. But now, they all knew the truth. Humanity wasn't weak. Humanity wasn't primitive. Humanity had been hiding. And now, that illusion had been torn apart for all to see. The Nemesis returns home. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Captain Elias Carter stood unmoving, staring at the warp tunnel forming ahead. The ship was preparing to return to Earth. The battle had ended, but Carter knew that the true consequences were only just beginning. Lieutenant Nora Vasquez approached, her eyes locked on the console in front of her. "Captain, incoming priority message from Fleet Command." Carter nodded. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered before stabilizing into the image of Admiral Jonathan Reese, one of the highest-ranking officers in Earth's unified military fleet. His expression was unreadable, but Carter knew the man well enough to see the gravity in his eyes. "Captain Carter," Reese said, his voice firm. "I hope you realize what you've done." Carter held the Admiral's gaze. "I do, sir." "The entire galaxy knows about us now," Reese continued. "They know about our technology, our power. That secrecy we spent centuries maintaining. Gone. Just like that." Carter exhaled. "With respect, sir, it was time." The Admiral remained silent for a moment before shaking his head. "You're not wrong. But now we have to deal with the fallout." Vasquez glanced at Carter, waiting for his response. "What's our next move?" Carter asked. Reese's eyes darkened. "Return to Earth immediately. The High Council is convening an emergency session. This war, it's about to escalate in ways we never imagined." The transmission ended. A tense silence settled over the bridge. The galaxy was watching them now, and they had no choice but to prepare for war. The gathering storm. The Nemesis emerged from hyperspace at the very edge of the Sol system, its black hull cutting through the void like a phantom. Earth's defense grid immediately activated, scanning the ship, verifying its identity. Then, as the Nemesis approached the inner solar system, it was joined by an escort of 5 massive battleships, the best-kept secrets of Earth's military, now being deployed openly for the first time. Humanity was done hiding. In orbit above Earth, the Titan-class war platforms, enormous orbital fortresses designed for planetary defense, began shifting their positions. The home fleet, comprised of some of the most advanced warships in existence, had already mobilized. A war that had never been Earth's to fight had now arrived at its doorstep, and humanity was preparing to face it head-on. The High Council's decision. The Nemesis docked at Earth's primary military station, and Carter was immediately escorted to the Grand Assembly Hall, where the High Council, Earth's ruling body, was waiting. The room was vast, with representatives from every major human colony, military branch, and scientific division seated in a circular formation. At the center stood Admiral Reese, along with 2 other high-ranking officials. All eyes turned to Carter as he entered. "Captain," Reese began, "you've put us in a position that we cannot retreat from." Carter nodded. "I understand, sir." "Do you?" One of the council members interjected. "Do you truly understand that this changes everything? That because of your actions, the entire galaxy is now preparing for war, with us at the center of it?" Carter met his gaze. "Sir, the war was already happening. The only difference is that now we've decided to fight back." A murmur ran through the chamber. Admiral Reese raised a hand, silencing the discussion. "We have only 2 choices before us," he said. "We continue to stand back and watch as the Vorka rebuild, waiting for them to strike us first, or we take the initiative." A silence fell over the room. Then, one by one, the council members began to nod. There was no more hiding. No more waiting. Humanity would not sit idle while the galaxy tore itself apart. They would step into the war on their own terms. The hunt begins. With the Council's decision made, Earth's military forces began mobilizing on a scale never before seen. The fleet's highest-ranked admirals convened with Carter and his officers. War strategies were drawn, alliances considered, new battle doctrines created overnight. But Carter had one specific mission in mind. The Vorka Dominion won't sit still for long, he told his crew aboard the Nemesis. They'll come back, stronger, angrier, and prepared. That means we can't wait for them to attack Earth. He turned toward the tactical display, where a detailed map of Vorka-controlled space flickered into view. "We take the fight to them." A low murmur spread across the room. "You're proposing a preemptive strike?" Vasquez asked, eyes wide. "I'm proposing we cripple them before they recover," Carter clarified. "The Nemesis is one ship, but now that we've been revealed, we're not the only ship. Earth has dozens of warships like this, hidden in deep space, ready for this exact moment." He gestured toward the screen. "The Vorka have supply lines, shipyards, hidden strongholds. If we hit them hard before they regroup, we could break their empire from within." For a moment, the room was silent. Then, Admiral Reese spoke. "You want to start the next phase of this war before they do?" Carter nodded. "It's the only way to win." Another pause. Then, slowly, the Admiral smiled. "Then let's get to work. The Shadow War begins." As the Nemesis and a fleet of Earth's most powerful warships departed the Sol system, heading toward Vorka territory, one thing became clear. The age of human secrecy was over. The age of human dominance had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again.